Architects in International. Okay, let's begin. So welcome to today's version of Talks from Cambridge, Young Architects in International Competition. Talks from Cambridge is one of the primary columns of this year's issue of online journal Pinup from China GSD, named Harvard China's Design Scholars 1941 to 2021. It will invite Harvard GSD scholars and alumni who have made contributions in academic field to hold lectures and share their recent academic achievements. For this lecture, we have invited 6 alumni in Communio, a design group formed by all GSD colleagues who won second prize in the Worldwide Open Ideas competition for Urban Conference Silicon Valley for the San Jose iconic landmark. The competition has 963 entries in phase 1, and 3 finalists were chosen to complete phase 2. The concept of the proposal, the Nebula Tower, seeks an unconventional architectural form of nostalgia and monumentality in the contemporary technological age. It is an inverted tower and archgate.
我觉得它可以放作 background noise， 你可以吗？
Yeah, and an observatory for the city, a structured vessel for lighting, and a canvas for all artists. This phase 2 competition project is collectively accomplished by HKS San Francisco office. For the following hour, we will have a 30-minute lecture and a 15-minute symposium, followed by a Q&A section. The speakers will share with us their competition experience from the professional perspective for young architects, and also the research for the project, the reflections of the competition mechanism, team formation, and project coordination. If you have any questions in the process, please send them to Jingyi or Jessie, who will coordinate the questions at the Q&A section, or you can use the raise hand function during the Q&A. Yeah.
Okay, should I just jump in?
Just one moment.
Right.
So I will briefly introduce today our 6 wonderful alumni that's gonna join our lecture and discussion. So first, we have 3 main lecturers in terms of this project. They are Qinrong Liu, who is the founder of Communio and the design principal of Deep Origin Innovation Lab, who graduated from MR program in the GSD last year. And also we have Zishen Wen, who is currently the designer at the James Conner Field Operation, and he graduated from MRA AP program 2019. So also we have Reza Li. Currently he's working as computation design consultant at Trimble Consulting, who graduated from MR program last year as well. Also, we have 3 guest speakers who also contributed in this project. They are Yuting Zhang, ARA, LED, AP, BD plus A, architect at Utah Inc. She graduated from MLD program in 2017. Also, we have Cheng Zeng. She is currently the design manager at China Resource Land and graduated from MR2 program 2018. And also we have Cao Qidai, who worked as a designer at the SW Group. Currently, he graduated from MRA1 program 2019 from the GSD. So let's welcome Reza to jump in, start our lecture today. Thank you very much. I think you are muted.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is Riza. I want to thank you for China GSD's invitation and for Talk from Cambridge for organizing this event and inviting us to share our experience. I will start to introduce you to the competition, the set context. I will walk through our initial design for phase one and talk about how Chinru and I collaborated for phase one. So my part will be very short. Then Chinru and Zishen will talk about the experience in phase two. Hopefully, you can see the sheer increase of complexity from phase one to phase two. So I think retrospectively, there are many uniquenesses in our experience. Firstly, it happened during the pandemic. We are forced to collaborate in a very different fashion. Secondly, it starts from a very small two-page competition proposal, and all of a sudden it expands and grows into a multi-team project that involves over a dozen companies. In phase two, Yuqing, Zhengcheng, Zishen, and Chaoqi also join us in the design team, and we form a small practice called Comilio. Last but not least, one interesting thing is the competition itself offers a great deal of opportunities, and we as fresh graduates who has very limited practical knowledge have to take the leadership and deliver the project. So even though in the end we didn't win the competition, for us it's a very valuable journey. So I will start to introduce the competition now. And The original San Jose Light Tower is constructed in 1881 and destroyed in a storm in 1915. So the light tower itself is a pioneer in the use of electricity for municipal lighting. Someone may even say it inspired the creation of Eiffel Tower and many subsequent tower type landmarks in our generation. San Jose, on the other hand, has become the center of Silicon Valley, the heart of technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. However, unlike many big cities in the States, San Jose doesn't have a city icon that represents the image of the city or celebrates the achievement of Silicon Valley. So some local leaders, some local community leaders started this competition called Urban Confluence to call for a design proposal. So it states that the mission is build an artistically inspired iconic landmark that will become the architectural legacy of our current generation of leaders and present it as a gift to the city of San Jose, Silicon Valley, and to the world. The competition is announced I think, if I'm right, is announced in late 2019. Roughly, Chino and I was working on it for probably 7 or 8 weeks for phase one submission. The submission deadline is July 2020. The phase one result release is in August 2020. So for phase one, there are about 900 entries, and 3 finalists are selected to enter phase two. For phase two, it starts in August 2020, and the submission deadline is January 2021. So we have roughly about 4 or 5 months to work on it. The result is released in March 2021. And for each finalist will have to form a team with consultants to refine their projects from a concept proposal to a SD level proposal with a stipend of $150,000. And also the jury includes some familiar names from architecture and the landscape discipline. and also includes some local community leaders, conservationists, and artists. So the site is located in this park called Arena Green, right next to the San Jose downtown, across the Guadalupe Freeway. It has been announced that the surrounding area will be developed by Google in the next 10 years. Though right now this area is not really developed, potentially it will be the new downtown in the future for San Jose. Arena Green Park is right next to the SAP Center, home for the San Jose Sharks. The Guadalupe River runs across the park. So if you think about it, 10 years ago, it was a paradise for birds and fish. Now the river is heavily polluted. Though the park is still used for its green lawn here and some sports facilities here. Generally speaking, the park is in a very bad shape. So in phase one, we only need to propose a design idea on the site for the icon. In phase two, we actually have a lot of design interventions on the whole park, both in the sense of the landscape design and in the sense of urban intervention. So for phase one design, if I recall correctly, we have probably over a dozen of design iterations. We tried and failed. Nothing really captured the idea of what is the city icon for our generation. So we restarted and trying to formulate a narrative in order to define what is the icon of our generation. So we did some historical survey of the landmarks and the monuments, and we have this idea that the icon of our generation should be a place instead of an object. It should be dynamic and ever-changing instead of being heavy and static. It should be incubating and inviting instead of being just egocentric. Also, it should resonate with the history, but still tell the story for the future. So we have this idea, maybe we should embed the original San Jose Light Tower in some kind of frame, some kind of generic frame that can be a virtual canvas or incubator for placemaking. So on the very right hand side, you see one of our very initial sketch, trying to capture the feeling of the conceptual feeling of the future landmark. So it is a really simple and conceptual idea. There are two bars we actually submitted for the phase one. We mainly want to capture the elegance, simplicity, and potential for the design. The design is not resolved or developed in any way, it's purely conceptual. So as you can see, it's just very unclear renders and some very simple drawings there. Here's a short video. We can imagine the framework can be a 3D canvas to host all kind of art installation and lighting installations. So here are some challenges for phase one for us. Both Chino and I, we work remotely. We chat through Zoom like this every day and communicate through Zoom screen sharing, sketches, and 3D models. We have to consistently guess each other's design ideas and design intentions. And we have to ask each other to clarify things again and again. Because the verbal communication and the visual doesn't really align together. So the whole final design emerges from arguments, fightings, and rejecting each other's ideas. But I think those arguments and discussions are the most valuable things because in the end, it's not one person convinces the other one. It is the better idea and better design solution emerges from these discussions and convince both of us. And for planning didn't work for us at all. So I remember we have this detailed schedule in Excel at the very beginning of the project that states in certain week we want to achieve certain things. But in the end, we spent 80% of our time for discussion, probably 10% of our time for modeling, 10% of our time for production. So for planning, this will be a very, very different story in phase 2. And I think without a proper and good scheduling, we won't be able to make it in phase 2. So in that sense, I want to end with the same challenges in phase 2. As you can see, the remote become, we have people all over the world. We have people in the West Coast, East Coast, in Shenzhen, Shanghai, and in Germany. And communication becomes something we need to handle with extreme energy and thoroughness, because we have to coordinate over a dozen of firms as our consultants. The arguments, discussion become more fierce because we have more people in the design team. The planning, the scheduling, and the production for SD is also very challenging because most of us don't really have a lot of experience in SD development. Again, we are kind of, most of us are fresh from school. And again, there are many unknowns. Here is just a couple aspects of it. We have legal issues. We are not familiar with contracts. We don't know how to start to assemble a team. And when it comes to project management and community engagement, it's more and more challenging. So I will pass it to Qinrong and Zishen, who will talk more on. Okay.
So we can go to the next page. So from this, Rita, can you mute yourself? So from this page, we can see the timeline that passed from the end of phase 1 to phase 2, and basically the structure of the Nebula tower is iterated from a pure cube to something more hybrid. But the urban strategy of our proposal stayed unchanged from phase 1 to phase 2 because the location we picked and the access and the new connection that we established in phase 1, they remained in phase 2, and actually it became the strategy almost for all three finalists in phase 2. What's different about this competition is it goes so public that we get a lot community feedbacks and public comments, and some of them are positive and some of them are negative. But because this is a public project, you need to take all of them and digest them to think about them. On the other hand, you still need to be persistent and clear about what you need to do in this project. And because after all, you do not know to what extent the public's comments will affect the jurors' attitude about the design. Actually, we were surprised when we were selected as one of the finalists in phase 1, because there is a thing in phase 1 that the community picked their favorite proposals about the 40s among all the 900 entries, and none of the 3 finalists were among the favorite list. The favorite list could be basically the proposal in the favorite list could be categorized in three typical architectural forms: the ring, or a tower, or some mountain-like shape that cover the whole site. But I think the Jersey, the problems, those things are not unique enough, but a little bit too universal around the world, and it does not represent the identity of San Jose. And we also, so from the timeline, you can see that we basically have a monthly review with the clients and other parties, and they give us critiques and feedbacks. And the final review was on the January 2021. Between all those large reviews, we also have a weekly meeting with two advisors who was very professional and had many experience in this industry as project management as our advisor from the client. Let's go to next page. So what troubles us at the first is how to assemble a team in a time that is as short as possible. But actually, we didn't make it as we expected to do. We want to assemble a team like maybe within a month, but it actually takes much longer, because at first we thought we should go for some small firms, because maybe small firms would be easier to communicate and more efficient. And and we're afraid that big firms might be taking control of the project. We might be overwhelmed by them, and maybe communicating with them would be more difficult. But actually, things goes the opposite. Smaller firms in time of pandemic, it's more difficult for them to take the risk to participate in this kind of competition. That's they don't have enough stipend, and but the big firms are interested in this kind of opportunity. They would like to take the risk to be a partner with you and working together. And so finally, we reached out with the help with the client. We reached out to HKS, and they also brought a lot of other consultants on board with us. Besides, for HKS, we reached out for our structure engineer by ourselves, and our lighting partners, lamp partners by ourselves as well. And the GSD connection really helps. It's easier. It's really easy for us to assemble a team like this with our landscape architecture team from GSD. And the guy we connected with them partners is also a GSD fellow, and another young lighting design studio, Loading, is also formed by GSD students as well. We also invited Andrew Witt and Peter Rowe as our guest critiques when in the middle of the phase 2 to help us review the project. So our main focus for phase 2 is basically develop the program, and try to solidify the structure, and reiterate the form, and to invest more on the landscape design for the urban environment. As you can see from this area view, that the Nebula Tower is located at the northwest of Arena Green, and there is a plaza that goes underneath the Nebula Tower from south to north. We also added the 2 bridges to connect the west and the east. And Zishen will introduce more detailed on the design of Arena Green Park later. So this image is a view that from the trail across the river, and this is the poetic rendering image that we love the best, because it clearly shows the blurred boundary between the structure, the light, and the nature. And the revealed symbolic figure of light tower, I think really evokes an emotional bridge for the people about the memory of the past and the imagination of the future. And it also shows how you can walk through the bridge and you can get to the ramp level directly. The structure here emerges from the ground, but it still looks very lightly floating on landscape. This is the Nebula Plaza on the south of Nebula Tower. Visitors can draw into it, and this plaza aligned to the existing urban environment. And because this is the image of the daytime of Nebula Tower, you can see how it is, how it looks like a vaguely pixelated cloud floating above in the background. And it shows a very open and welcome gesture, which makes it so different from the other landmark project in this world. And what's important about design is you can see all the lattice within it's 45-degree rotated, but they are still orthogonal with each other. This is an important move that we decided to do because it can break the boundary reading after all. Otherwise, the boundary of the Nebula Tower would be too clear to read. So the ground level, this is the ground level that shows the landscape and the two axes connect the ground plane of Nebula Tower. This plaza continues from the exterior to the interior and becomes a multi-directional urban interface with an open atrium. All the service rooms are placed on the ground, but the main programs are on the ground level. As you can see, there are administration, cafe, and a gallery at the south, and a retail space at north. The central plaza is a flexible space that can accommodate sculptures, especially large-scale exhibitions, and could also be used for live performance art as well. This is the linear space at the east ring, which is under the landscape. That is a flexible zone for donor recognition alongside rotating art exhibition. And this is a program that the client strongly required. We are arriving at the promenade ramp level. This is the interface, both urban and natural. This level is both inward and outward because inwardly it's integrated with the central plaza, and outwardly the landscape seating also offers a pleasant resting place and viewing the arena green as well. Those are two jeeps that shows the sequence how you can ascend from the amphitheater seatings and the ramp level while immersed in this delicate lattice structure, and visitors can enjoy the view of the park through the ramp sequence. We also added the visitor center or event, or let's say an event space at the top of the Nebula Tower for people to overlook the city, and because it's a place that is very close to the downtown, where you can also see distant mountainscape. The North Shore section cutting through the central plaza illustrates the abstract open flow space at the ground level, which connects the architecture, the landscape, and the urban environment, which also makes use of the atrium of the hollow tower inside. This is also an animation that shows how you are standing inside the central void and you can be surrounded by this immersive environment created by this monumental reputation and the enormous lighting matrix. When we are approaching the central stair of the void sequence in the middle, it also offers the opportunity to ascend inside the void tower. The ensemble of the light and the shadow created a very unique, sensational, essential experience, because it gives you a sense of infinite depths of time and space. This drawing gives us an overview of the circulation and the program. You can see 2 elevators to the top deck. It's on the northwest corner, and another 1 small elevator that takes you to the ramp level. And you can see 1 egress staircase at the northeast corner, and 1 central grand stair that goes spirally around the void tower and connects the interior plaza and the top event space. The circulation elements are purposely merged into the wire lattice of the Nebula tower. We discussed a lot with the vertical transportation consultant, the VDA, and our code consultant about how many stairs would we need and how large the elevator shaft should be, and including how they can fit in, because we need to know the dimension and everything, that those things can be fit into the grid system that we designed for the Nebula tower. And finally, the elevator shaft has a structure that is independent from the lattice itself, but somehow it is also emerged. It is also merged with it. Those are just some views from the top deck where you can see the downtown and you can have dining in the event space. This image shows the geometry generation logic of the Nebula tower. So the lattice density changed both vertically and horizontally. Rize wrote a script to control it. That's why you can see the density changes uneven. So we played with it for months without input, like programs, side restriction, boundary, and void geometry to find out the best iteration. This design approach actually gives us a very flexible and adaptive system to adjust the design. But script can only give us a very schematic form. Every time we need to make modification, there are still a lot of manual work that we need to do. We need to observe and make a correction to make sure that all the details are right. Another overview of the this is the digital lighting matrix that we talked about, because it could be 3D canvas for all kind of artists about lighting performance, and it's very flexible compared to those traditional 2D or planar lighting performance in the past, and it becomes very volumetric and dynamic. When communicating with the lighting consultant team, besides the performance, the client is also concerned about how the light pollutions would impact the ecological environment and aviation. And they finally give us a very, the lighting team finally gave us a very detailed guide about how we can control the lights and how we can make sure all the angles of the lighting devices are right to avoid all those issues. And those 2 images are the demos created by Studio Loading about the dynamic lighting matrix. And you can imagine this Nebula tower is 170 feet tall and 130 feet radius on the plan. You can imagine such a big lighting matrix sitting there, and you can immerse yourself how marvelous experience that could be. This is another very important view that is seen from the east bank, which is also close to the view that you are running on the highway and you see the Nebula Tower from a distance. Then we build a physical model for this for this view, and we, as well, you can stand on the bridge and see the Nebula Tower. You can see this very ambiguous figure of the tower inside. Our structure team took a lot of effort to make this structure work. They take a lot of load into consideration, like the self-weight and live loads like people and elevator, wind loads as well. Because the California area is a place with earthquakes, they also take seismic loadings into consideration. As you can see on the right, these 2 images show how the shaking would look like in the simulation, and that basically defines the 2 layers of system of the structure. As you can see, the tower is the primary structure. The primary structure of the tower, and the lattice around it is the secondary structure wrapping around it. And this 2-layer structure would allow the fireproof issue to be easier to pass the code. Connect and Martin also developed the tectonic and the fabrication details for the nodes of the Nebula Tower with all those orthogonal lattice. Finally, I will end my part here with this image. This is one of my favorite image of the physical model photo, because it's in this image, the Nebula Tower looks very cloudy and ambiguous, and somehow you don't even see the hollow tower inside it. The shape becomes very intangible. It's hard for you to define what it is. So I think for the next, it will be passed to Zishen to talk about the landscape design. Thank you.
Okay, I will just start the landscape design, and let me just share my screen. Yeah, so in terms, since like basically because the time is pretty short and I want to make it very fast, and I want to say like in terms of like working as a kind of landscape architect with Chelsea for this project, actually there are lots of challenging for the landscape design, especially for this kind of the practical projects. I think there are multiple things. The first is like, you know, the landscape is always working as a kind of medium that in between the architecture and the public space or the public realms. So basically there are lots of these things, not only about the design, but also like communication or collaboration we need to do between like the ecological team, the architecture team, and also other teams. So I think that is something like pretty challenging for our team, for me, Chelsea and me, and also we spend lots of time like in collaboration with the OGB, because they are like a pretty professional and awesome like landscape architecture firm. So they give us lots of guidance in terms of how can we stage these things to like make it more like engage in terms of the like the public space design, and also in terms of the whole community engagement. Yeah, so in terms of the overall, the landscape design is like at the very beginning, we just have a pretty simple idea, like to make a basic design, but after like several iterations with the client and also with the whole team, we realized that basically there are lots of great opportunities or possibilities about the site, and the site is not only like a kind of the confluence about only two rivers, but it's truly like a confluence of the city, culture, and all of those things happen here. So, and also in terms of like the formal language, we are highly inspired by the kind of the ecological patterns around the Bay Areas. That we see this as a kind of the pattern that is flexible, but also dynamic, that incorporate all of those diversities, which is something pretty awesome for us. And yeah, so we built on all of those ideas while trying to make the landscape as a way that can speak with architecture, but in a kind of the opposite way, but finally have the same destination. That is, while trying to have this kind of the flexible framework to speak to the modular and also rational framework of architecture. But ultimately, we're trying to achieve a goal that our overall design is very dynamic and also diverse in terms of all of those activities and people can engage in or trying to participate in. Yeah, and also in terms of the overall design, we try to like speak with the architecture's axis, but still try to connect the site with the overall urban context to provide all of those access for people to enjoy the site and also to use those space are previously like not allowed to be accessed or like just like leftover space. And yeah, so then we like replan the circulation of the site, trying to reactive all of those space and make them useful for all different kind of activities, but still try to align them with architecture, because that is very important part that we have all of those kind of entrance or kind of the working environment experiences for people to get into the site. Yeah, and that is just like an axon to show overall like our planning, our program planning, and also the way that we organize the programs, activities along with the vegetation. Yeah, so basically our idea is try to create different multi-scales public space for multiple activities and use those activities as a way to reactive the site. And yeah, that is some like kind of the larger scale concept that we are trying to think about, like if we can cut off the roads and then make the roads for some events, that may like contribute to the kind of the more benefits for the public or for the urban. And that is all just like views we created, collaborate with OJB to demonstrate that all of those experience within the garden or within the, not within the garden, but within the park and also within the public space is really enjoyable and really like inviting for multiple different groups of people to participate in. Yeah, so yeah, things here, I think like one of the things we learn from this is like, you know, designing the public space in the US, well, especially in the US context, is that it's not only like designing some cool form or like kind of the fancy thing, but you are trying to think about how your design can be like really inclusive in terms of different peoples can enjoy, and also multiple activities can emerge from here. Yeah, so this one is trying to create a kind of accessible experience for the river, which is previously really hard for people to reach, but then we create this trails and also balconies for people to have an understanding of the water and their values in terms of the culture and also ecological. And yeah, that is like multiple scales of the space, multiple activities. Some are like huge gathering space, some are like more inclusive and also more kind of the enclosure. Yeah, and all of those are like the technical drawings we created from the landscape and also the urban planning towards the architecture. Yeah, I think yeah, there are some kind of the back and forth or collaboration with HKS and OGB that we create those kind of the SD standard like technical drawings, and also that is something we really learn a lot from, like how can we draft out or trying to call out things in a kind of the proper way. Yeah, so that's it. And then I will just like close the presentation and then bring the to the next step, which is I think it's a Q&A and also the open discussion.
Yixing, I'm not sure if we are going to the Q&A or the symposium talk between our team for now.
Yeah, let's start with the symposium and then we will have the Q&A section. And if you
Okay.
have any question in the process, please send it to Jing.
Yeah, so after the introduction of the competition, we will have some conclusion and reflection on this competition as well. Like personally for me, one thing interesting in this competition is that we actually invited the two rendering firm to create renders for us. The most beautiful image that you can see as the post and in our background is from a very expensive individual rendering studio. I love their works, but they're very expensive. And most of the rendering are created by another, let's say, a lower standard firm, and it's easier to communicate with them. They are faster and they produce a lot of works, but and it saves the budget. But somehow I think if we have more budget, we definitely would like a very high standard rendering firm to take over our work, and we self also create a lot of renders by our own. And that's how you see some of the renderings, they are not on the same, let's say, style or on the same standard. But that's the limitation of the budget. So that's the only choice we can do at that time. Yeah. And also, I would like to cue Yuting and Qiaoqi to talk about their thoughts about the competition mechanism and maybe the project management, because Yuting is the only one who has licensed it, who is a licensed architect in our team. And at first, he took the role of the project manager in our team. And Yuting and Qiaoqi also participated in a lot of real competitions, both internationally and domestically in US. So their thoughts would be very valuable for us to hear about.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril. Yeah, I think as Cyril just mentioned, the project management is really challenging at the beginning when I was brought to the team. And then the thing is when in any of the office that we work on competitions, there's always going to be the principal, the project manager going to come up with a list of consultants and going to make the hard decisions. But for this one, it's there's no one to count on. It's only us. We do have the advisors from the client's team, but it just they're not going to help you to make final decisions. They're just going to give you suggestions. So I think it's a really good learning experience. In the big office, we do consultant coordination, but you never really review the contract or thinking about you have to bring the people to do cost estimation, thinking about the budget you have. So that's really good learning experience. And the other thing I want to add on is we're just young graduates from GSD. We don't have built work. If you work in an office and you find architect on record like HKS or some other forms, they already know you. So you have built work, you have reputation, there's something that they already know, and they're going to treat you as equal. But I think for us, when we collaborate with those big offices, we have to build the trust in between these team members. I think it's not only our design proposals, it's really kind of make them feel we have a winner kind of future or something. The other thing I think is our work ethic, and we're all just a hardworking group of people. And then it's also our passion. I think eventually, all the people we work on from either OJB or HKS or all of our other consultant teams is like really on board with all of our ideas. And it has been like a really smooth communication at the end. And that's kind of how the result comes all about. So I think that's kind of a long answer for my lessons and learned through this project, but it's like a really great collaboration effort for all of our team members.
Yes, hey, for me, yeah, I think Yuting said a lot of things I want to say. It's actually a very unique experience for like recent graduates can just get involved in such a high level project. It's not, but it's not like we work in our own firms, like our companies. We have big projects, we have large competitions, but it's totally different when you are in charge of this kind of large project and dealing with other high level consultant. I think one interesting part of this competition is different from other competition I have been involved is we have in the competition phase, we actually have a lot of community engagement like other people have mentioned. Usually when you do a competition is either a RFQ, is request for qualification or just a purely conceptual design, which you make a package, make your design idea, and then they select the winner and you go into the SD phase. But we are actually doing the SD phase during the competition with two other competitors. That's a very interesting part. I think part of the reason is because all the three shortlists are similar, which are like us, no build work and no reputation have been built, and they need to kind of cultivate us and like they need to go through all the SD process with you together and to see if you are really qualified for going forward. But it may be a different story when you are working in a larger firm, but I think it really gave us a lot of opportunity to learn a lot of like practical things and the public thoughts, something like that, and how to communicate with people who don't know design and who know the place better than you, but they're living there and have their own their own vision for the future. And the second part is also very unique is like Yuting is working in an architecture firm and I'm working in a landscape firm. We like architecture firm and landscape firm, they cooperate in design in competitions a lot, but we see each other as a team during the competition, but you still separate teams. Like, but in this one, we really like the architecture design and the landscape design are actually really working together. We text each other every day and meet like 3 times a week or something like that. And it's very different from like you make a package and send to the architect and the architect make a package sent to you, but you're really tweaking all the details together and doing each other's work. I think that's a very interesting part because I have architecture background as well, and I learned landscape in GSD. So, and I know Zishun have the same background. So with both knowledge, I think it's a more efficient way in some way that we can work together to create a design, not only landscape or architect, is just create a design for the space. I think that's a very, very unique experience.
Yes, and I would like to add on onto that as well, because this is totally remote coordination. We are in different cities, and it's really based on our trust with each other. Otherwise, our communication cannot be so efficient and smooth in the overall process in phase 2. And this is a very unique experience. And talking about the mechanism of the competition, this one is also a little bit different, because I know like Chelsea sometimes worked in competitions in China. And usually if you are selected as one of the finalists in phase 1, you go to the phase 2, the time the client give you probably would be no more than 5 weeks. And you need to give them a full package to develop it to a certain level, which I would say the production amount is similar to what we saw today in our presentation, although the development level is won't be too close to SD level. So I think so this competition is kind of generous about the time that they would like to provide for the designers. So that's a very rare opportunity, I say, for young architects like us. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Maybe Ruize or Zisheng, you want to add something?
Yeah, I feel like Chelsea mentioned something very interesting that actually I remember Yuting is graduate from MAUD and is working as an architect. And Qinrong, you have also have background in urban planning as well from Tongji. So it's actually a very multi-discipline team. Um, and I feel like when we communicate, because we share certain backgrounds, and so it makes super easy to communicate. But I feel like the other day, well, we were talking about this. So Chao Qi and Zishen was working in a manner that they both know what they want to achieve. They align with the design intentions. But I feel like that's a very different story for the architecture side. I still remember we have like 2 hours argument about certain design move. Then, like eventually, I think Yuting convinced both of us. I feel like that's the moments I learned the most, and some of the most valuable experiences. Um, yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this, but I truly appreciate the collaboration and learning from each other.
Yeah, actually, I mean, in terms of the landscape work, I think Georgia and I collaborate really smooth. Like we really like trust each other, and we just like pick up others' work and then work together and continue work for that. I think it's mainly because we like come from the same program, so we almost have the same taste or kind of the same understanding of the landscape, and also like Chelsea working at SWA, and also at Backtree is my first like landscape internship is in SWA, which is like build all of my understanding about how the practice looks like, how can we like work for the practical projects. So I think overall we have a kind of really similar understanding of the landscape and also the skill sets, which makes us like have a kind of always like speaking the same language. So we are kind of the collaborate really smooth, and that is something really surprised me actually yeah.
Yeah. So I want to add on to that. Actually, I've never worked with any of my team members at GSD before. There has been like no collaboration with any of them. I only know Xinrong, but it's like we've never collaborate. So I think it was like really unique experience. Like we kind of all have the same value in terms of design. So it was like really surprising. And then you can always count on others. If you don't have time to do something, there's always someone going to take care of that. So I think that's not like, I think that's kind of rare in terms of collaboration. You don't always end up have a group of people like could have the exactly the same work ethic. Anyway, it's like just a really good collaboration experience with, yeah, all my friends right now.
Thanks, Yuting. So I think that's the so before we go to the Q&A session, I'm going to share the video that we submitted for the final review of the phase 2.
about a contemporary landmark. We are envisioning something that connects the future and the past, something that recalls our emotion of the places and represents the identity of the city. A nebula is a massive cloud of dust and gas between stars acting as a nursery for new stars. What we need today for a city is not a monolithic monument, but something we can engage, something soft, ever-changing, and adaptable. As a great historical icon, the old San Jose Light Tower rendered the visionary courage of the pioneers of the city. Although the city is depicted as a tech innovation hub today, we would like to remind people that our city is built and evolved from generation to generation. Here, the traditional characteristic of a light tower as a figure is inverted into a spatial void. How we behold it becomes more nebulous. It's like your memories. They may look ambiguous, they may fade away, but they will unfold at a certain moment. Our hope for the Nebula Tower is to bring time and light together and to create a hybrid prototype of diversity. It's an inverted tower and an arched gate. It's an arena for civic space and an observatory for the city. It's a structured vessel for lighting and a canvas for all artists. Our collective memory and our imagination are the bridges of our innovative spirit and our city. And those are what enable us to transcend the time and explore things beyond the boundaries.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that guest sharings, and we think your projects is really inspiring and amazing. So now we are going to head up to the Q&A section, and we've received a lot of questions and selected 3 of them regarding the time. So the first one is saying that this design gives out a feeling of unfinished. It is not a criticism here, but a discussion of very interesting state, which gives viewers a lot of expectations. Keep in mind that the operational logic of this competition is to ask, well, if you win the competition, what would you do next with this plan? Or are you deliberately pursuing a feeling of unfinished?
I think I can answer this question, and maybe others can add on to that. So I think the one who asked this question has a very good observation on the design intention behind the project, because this unfinishedness is definitely one of the let's say impression that is embedded in our taste about how this project should be look like if we want to convey the idea that an architecture is something that always in the face of changing, it's always growing, and it's not something static or stable. That's why we choose this very neutral and or very transparent form. with this kind of universal language, we created this structure-like thing rather than a very solid and programmatic buildings for this landmark. And that's why I think this is so that's a very good question about our design intention behind our design decisions. If we won the competition, and what would we do in the next phase, that would be kind of difficult for us to answer because we haven't get there yet. And I can imagine there must be a lot of more feedbacks from the cities and the communities, and all this will have great influence on the future development of the project. Including more detailed calculation on the structure. Do you want the structure to be even more slim, or you want the structure to be more heavy? There's a lot of possibilities in the next phase. So for now, our vision for the next phase is just open. Thank you. That's my answer.
Thank you, Qingrong. And the second question is, what informs the decision to introduce a topography change? Well, you have amphitheaters and stairs going down the tower in front of the tower. Set aside the programs, have you ever tinkered the views of arrival towards the tower? And what kind of sensory or feelings do you want to review?
I think Zishen can answer this question as well. So my answer to this is it's a very straight and simple idea that how people would perceive the tower when they arrive at the site. It's basically in the daytime, you are going to see something cloudy and blurred, but you can hardly distinguish what's the figure inside, but somehow you can sense there is a hollow figure in it. And if you know the history, and you will understand what that is, that's the absence ghost of the destroyed old San Jose Light Tower. And I think that represents the feeling of memory, which is something not very clear, but you can still have sense of that. And during the night, when the light tower within glows, it shines. And I think that represents something like a spiritual core of this city, and it can connect people's collective feeling about the past and the future. And you in the previous question, you also asked about things about topography, right? So I think Zishen can add on that.
Yeah, basically, I think the changing of the topography is something, I think it's like just first mentioned by the HKS. I think probably because you have some experience for that, so they bring this to the table, and then we discuss for several rounds about that. I think finally we really love this solution, because that is in terms of the from the kind of the public space point of view. I think the most kind of the great thing is that it achieve multi-layers, multi-levels entrance, so that people can enter from the ground level, and so they have a kind of another entrance from the second level, which makes the whole building, or the whole the building more accessible. And also because of the changing of the topography, actually there are lots of the things can be programmed onto the surface. If you look carefully to the plan, you can see the north and south plazas, because they are having different kind of the topography, like all the gradings, so then we can program different activities to them. And also because of the changing of the kind of the second level entrance, then it can become a kind of the pretty good long slope that people can stay there and also have a view of the whole river. So yeah, I think overall that is a pretty good strategy, and we love it a lot. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Zishen and Qingrong. And the third question is more related to landscape design, saying that the Guadalupe River seems to be a precious geological gift to the site. So what do you think is the relationship between the river and the design of the tower? And how would the park react to flood risks?
Yeah, probably Chelsea can speak about that because I think it's really close to the landscape design.
Yeah, for the question, Guadalupe River, that Guadalupe River Park was actually designed by Hargreaves, like I don't remember how many years ago, but a long time ago. It has always been a very important space for public space for the local people. And I think an interesting thing is on the opposite part, just across the river, on the other side of the river, opposite to our tower, is a great lawn. I think it's the biggest lawn in San Jose area. That lawn was designed by part of Hargreaves' design and has been a very important public space and icon for the whole time. And we kept that lawn in the same location. And because the culture committee also told us a lot of story about that part, and they really, it's the same insist that we both want to keep that lawn and as a major opponent of our public space design. And also it's just on the opposite part of our tower, so it's have a great view. I think we have one rendering of that, have a signature view to our tower. So I think the tower, we actually have a lot of discussion on the tower's location, like the specific location within the design area. And I think the final location is really good. One part is the relationship between the tower and the lawn. And the second part is, as you mentioned, the flood situation. When we were selecting the location, there are government guidelines, like you can only select above the flooding line. So that gives us very little choice. And the current location is also responding to the flooding line, like it's not gonna be flooded. And from the landscape point of view, we had a lot of discussion with the ecological consultant and some plant specialist talking about the wetland and the riverside ecology, like how many trees they want to keep and how many species they want to keep in the same place. So we actually have a special design for the two riverbank alongside the river. That part we want to still have embraced the river level changing so that it can talk with our park. And you can see from the design, we have very minimum touch when we going directly next to the river. We at the very beginning, we designed some like programs like amphitheater towards the river or something like that. But eventually we decided only to do a couple very light trails can bring you closer to the river, but not disturb the nature and the ecology too much. And also the trail, the bridge itself can be the small bridges under the large bridge itself can be flooded. We allow it to be flooded from time to time, so that we don't want to like control the flood or anything. We just want to work with it.
Okay, thank you, Chaoqi, for your sharing, and I'll pass the mic to Yixing.
Yeah, and so after we get through the lecture, symposium, and also the Q&A section, really great to have you sharing all this information and or your experience through the process. And like, thank you so much for your sharing, and we expect a better works from all of you to make our world a more innovative and also better place for all the human beings to live in. And yeah, so thank you so much again, and thank you for the audience to join in with us through the process. And we look forward to the next version of Talks from Cambridge in a few weeks.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
You guys.
Thank you.
For a
Thank
great
you.
discussion and presentation.
Thank you.
And good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys.
Good
Good
day.
night and have a good day.
Bye.
Yeah.